Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 5th of October, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I did speak yesterday about the Ripple case and about how the SEC lost its kind of appeal in court here. Now Justin Slaughter, who's the policy director at Paradigm, had a great take on this that came out after I did yesterday's video. So I just wanted to add this onto the things that I said yesterday. He said the major implications of Judge Torres refusing to allow an interlocutory appeal on Ripple are: one, no chance of Judge Torres' ruling being overturned before the end of 2024, as the SEC had obviously hoped. Number two, no chance this case can get to the Supreme Court before 2026. And then Justin continues, basically we continue to live in a world where the SEC is losing cases in the lower courts, but the Supreme Court has yet to rule decisively on whether crypto tokens might be securities subject to SEC jurisdiction, commodities subject to CFTC jurisdiction, or something else. And he continues, note, I'm of the opinion that the Supreme Court, which is very hostile to agency independence and powers which are explicitly granted by our recent Congresses, will be very hostile to the SEC's arguments here. So I think going to the Supreme Court on Ripple will be a bad bet for the SEC. So yeah, this is more of what I was talking about yesterday about obviously how Ripple lost this appeal here, but I didn't touch on the fact that this cannot be overturned. You know, this case cannot be overturned before the end of 2024, so I believe that they can't appeal again till the end. They, being the SEC, can't appeal again till the end of 2024, and no chance that this case can go to the Supreme Court before 2026. So we have some breathing room here on this front, which is pretty cool to see, and it's not another loss for the SEC, obviously, as well. But it's interesting for Justin to bring up the Supreme Court here. Now, obviously, you guys know I'm not a US citizen. I'm not totally versed on how the US system works, but from my reading, the Supreme Court, as Justin says here, is very hostile to these government agencies. So the SEC probably doesn't want these cases to end up at the Supreme Court, because then if the Supreme Court basically votes against them, or I guess settles against them, then that's even worse than what they're in now. And it basically puts them in, possibly from my understanding, the worst position that they could probably be in when trying to bring enforcement actions against crypto companies here. But I still think they're in a pretty bad position already. I mean, as I said, they've lost all these cases so far. They're approving the ETFs as well, like the Futures ETFs. And it looks like they're going to be approving the Bitcoin spot ETF very soon, to be honest. You know, I've seen some people say it could actually happen this month because of the grayscale conversion thing. I don't know for sure if it'll happen this month or anything like that, but as I said to you guys, it's happening either in Q4 or Q1. Like, there's, in my mind, there's really no doubt there about that, and it's just a matter of kind of when the SEC decides to approve it here. But I think everyone's pretty much like already accepted the fact that it is happening, and obviously from then on, we're kind of speculating on when the spot ETH ETF happens. Look, if ETH gets a spot ETF next year, like that to me would signal a just complete 180 that the SEC has done. And it's kind of funny because it would water down the SEC's arguments. They would have a really hard time going after really any other kind of crypto asset or crypto asset company, or crypto company, I should say, in this space. And also it would really, really hurt their chances of winning the Coinbase case as well, right? So we'll have to see how that all shakes out. But I also wanted to note with the Coinbase case, I had a few people talk to me about this. I want to reiterate again that Coinbase is the one being sued by the SEC, not the companies of the tokens named in the Coinbase suit. The tokens that were named in the Coinbase and Binance suit were named as, I guess, like evidence that the SEC wanted to put forward to argue that Coinbase has been operating illegally by trading unregistered securities. But the SEC hasn't gone after Solana, hasn't gone after Polygon, hasn't gone after Lido, right? These entities, they've gone after Coinbase and Coinbase alone, and they've used these arguments of, you know, Matic is a security, Sol is a security, LDO is a security, and a bunch of others in there in order to kind of like bolster their case, right? So I figured that was worth reiterating, because I've seen people still be confused about that. And that's really kind of bullish, right? Because it means that if Coinbase wins, then it sets a really great precedent, but also it shows that the SEC in particular doesn't really want to go after the asset issuers themselves, because if they did, they'd go after, like they do go after them sometimes, but a lot of the bigger ones they haven't really gone after, and I think that's because they know that they would have a hard time because these projects would actually fight them in court. Like obviously with the Ripple thing, they lost there, but these other kind of projects, like the foundations behind them, would definitely take the SEC to court. And on top of that, I don't even know if the SEC has jurisdiction over most of these things because these tokens weren't actually issued in the US. And a lot of the time, if they did an ICO or a token sale, it was not available to be sold to US retail investors. It was only US accredited investors. And all of the kind of like KYC and AML stuff was done through there. So when you really look at it from that perspective, yeah, the SEC has a really uphill battle here, and I feel like they're just going to keep losing if they go to court. So yeah, I mean, no love lost there from me. Definitely think this is a good thing for crypto, and it's great to see Justin here adding some more clarity around this recent ruling in the Ripple case here. All right, speaking of the ETFs, the ETH Futures ETF started seeing some flows today. Not a ton, but some. Apparently $15.6 million with VanEck in an early lead over ProShares here. Now, as Hal Press noted in the replies here, this could be due to some kind of investors that VanEck has gotten involved here. It could be some market makers or seeding capital. Whatever it is, it's still good to see a little bit of volume kind of popping up here. But as I said yesterday, it doesn't really signal anything because we're in the depths of a bear market, in the depths of the, I guess, crab market, I should say. These products are not necessarily very interesting right now, especially they're not interesting to crypto natives. Anyone buying crypto right now is probably just buying spot, right? So if we saw such weak inflows for a spot ETF, I would be more concerned, I guess you could say. But when it's a futures ETF, I don't really care too much about that. And as I said, like the Bitcoin futures ETF launched at the top of the market last time in the end of 2021 there. So if it was to launch today, I doubt it would see much more inflows than the ETH futures ETF has seen. Because as I said, and as I've been saying for months now, the only people buying crypto right now are the ones that are buying for the long term. You've got the traders, the day traders, stuff like that, but they're not relevant to my kind of argument here in terms of who's buying these things to hold for potentially longer periods of time. Like especially when it comes to ETFs, people will probably want to hold them for years to take advantage of the tax benefits here. But the only people doing that right now, the long-term crypto investors, and they're buying spot. I'm not buying a futures ETF. I don't really know anyone in crypto that is buying a futures ETF. So that's another reason why these products have not have not seen those inflows there. But as I said, it is not really any kind of signal, kind of noise to me, but I figured it was worth kind of updating you guys on this anyway. All right, so I came across this tweet today from Stakeosaurus.eth. So apparently they've put together a comprehensive staking guide here, which you can go check out for yourself. And this will apparently get you all up to speed and help you become a solo staker here. And he's got a tweet about this, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But I had a quick look over the guide and over what they've got packed in here. It's pretty comprehensive. You can go to sections like roles of a node operator, and you can actually see diagrams just describing what a node operator does, which is pretty cool. I haven't really seen that kind of explicitly printed out before. Then you have responsibilities of a node operator, rewards and penalties as well, which is pretty good to kind of break down. And as you can see, they're breaking down the rewards by referencing the Ultrasound Money website too. And then you've got like a overview over what setups to use and kind of how to install the operating system, install the validators, all that good stuff there. So if you've been on the fence about setting up your own solo staking operation and you wanted an easy guide to kind of help you along with that, I can recommend this one. As I said, I went through it and it seems pretty good. So definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But this isn't the only one that exists. There are plenty of guides out there today. But I think when it comes to staking guides, you want them to be as simple as possible while also answering your questions. Like the top question for a lot of people will be, what are the rewards? Well, the rewards and penalties, of course, are listed at the top here. And the funny thing is that with the penalties, people are often very worried about going offline. And as I've described plenty of times on the Refuel before, going offline is not a big deal. Unless you go offline with a lot of other validators at the same time, which they've actually covered here in the section of correlated downtime. Unless that happens, you'll be totally fine if you just go offline because your internet went off or your power went off or something like that. The penalties are extremely small, and it's called an inactivity leak. So you're not getting slashed. You're just getting a slow bleed of ETH out for being offline, which can be made back up once you come back online. Now, obviously, the biggest, loss that you could suffer is that if you were going to propose a block in the time that you were offline, you would miss the block and then you would potentially miss some juicy rewards there. But I mean, for the majority of people, the chances of that happening is pretty small. Unless you're running a lot of validators, it's pretty small, right? And then they go on, double signing the actual way to get slashed and stuff like that, which is pretty cool to see. They talk about client diversity as well, which I thought was really great. But yeah, anyway, I'm not going to cover the whole thing here. You can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, the privacy and scaling explorations team out of the EF here has a great little EIP draft here for something called Proof-of-Solvency, which is a standard for centralized exchanges to use to prove their solvency in a privacy-preserving way. At least that's the kind of a vibe I get from this, or the kind of read I get from this. So there is currently an EIP draft. There is a two-part explanatory blog post, which you can check out here, and a GitHub organization with more details about this. So you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I wanted to break down what this kind of is from a high level. So there's been this push for a while in the crypto ecosystem for many years now, honestly, of getting these centralized exchanges to essentially sign messages over what addresses they own in order to prove that they have the assets that they say they do. Now, there is actually a section for this on CoinGecko. So if we go to CoinGecko, I'm going to bring this up to show you what this looks like. Here's CoinGecko, and then you go to, let's just go to crypto exchanges at the top, and then you can see the reserves data is listed as available or unavailable, and then there's and then it's got little notes here. So if you click through to them, you can actually find this data. But reserves data is only one piece of the puzzle, because when it comes to solvency, you have to actually account for the amount of crypto in reserve and the amount of debt the exchange has, or the amount of, I guess, liabilities, I should say, that the exchange has, right? So the liabilities and the assets that they control, the reserves, have to match, or else you basically have a mismatch here, and you potentially have a kind of situation where if for some reason there was a bank run on the exchange, like for 100% of the assets on there, they wouldn't be able to meet those kind of withdrawal liabilities because of other liabilities elsewhere. And we obviously saw what the worst case scenario of this looks like with FTX recently. But yeah, this EIP, from my understanding, would basically make it so that it was enshrined in the Ethereum protocol, where essentially these centralized exchanges could prove their solvency in protocol here. So yeah, you can go read more details about this. As I said, there is a detailed blog post in part 1 and part 2, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But that's essentially my read on it, but I may have gotten it wrong. But you can see here, assets and liabilities, they already list this out here. Basically, that's what solvency is. Solvency isn't just having the assets, it's also having the assets matched against liabilities and vice versa there. So you can go check that out. We'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Tony, the MEV guru, really, or the MEV data visualization guru that I've talked about a bunch of times on the refill before, has a new chart out here where he said, this chart shows slot shares of builders within MEV-Boost payments intervals in ETH. While builders such as ETH-Builder land many blocks with small MEV-Boost payments, Beaver Build seems to leverage a competitive edge as MEV opportunities increase. So you can actually see just a breakdown here of what the block building landscape looks like. The block building landscape is incredibly competitive, it's incredibly specialized, and it's very intricate in how these different builders want to take advantage of strategies, because there's obviously not a lot of profit in every block, right? And it depends on market activity, depends on what the gas prices are, depends on what's happening on chain. But there are plenty of instances of builders foregoing building blocks because they're just not profitable enough for them to do that, and they'd rather wait for other blocks to come along, and then maybe the block just gets built by a vanilla validator because of that. or it gets built by another builder that doesn't really care or has less of a market share. But yeah, this whole kind of builder market and I guess builder searcher kind of ecosystem is really fascinating to me. And as I said, Tony is the master of visualizing all of this. You can go to his Twitter profile and check out all his websites. They're in his bio here. But this is also an issue for the Ethereum network generally to solve, right? Where I've described before about how having centralization among builders is the end game, because really, it's kind of like a fool's errand to expect that we're going to be able to decentralize the builder role, because the incentives just aren't there. But the problem is that the builders have control over what transactions make it into the blocks that they build, and then that leads to censorship. And as I mentioned last time, 4 of the 5 top builders are currently censoring the Tornado Cash transactions, which means that it doesn't even matter if 100% of the relayers weren't censoring, it would still be censored because of the builders here. So when you look at it from that perspective, how do we solve that issue? I've talked about inclusion lists before, which are this thing that basically allows us to give power back to the validators rather than builders being able to kind of like censor transactions. And in that world, it's okay if the builders are hyper centralized, but still you want to see at least some competition amongst the builders, right? Because at the end of the day, it's an incentive thing, it's an economics thing. But yeah, it's kind of wild that only 5 builders account for most of the market share on the network right now. I do wonder if that can change in the future, but with these other protections in place like PBS and also inclusion lists, I don't necessarily think we're going to have to worry too much about decentralizing the builder role here. But anyway, you can check out these websites. As I said, go to Tony's profile. We'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, growthepie.xyz has some new updates to their website that they've announced today. So they've said here, we've added a few cherries on top of our delicious pie. The new landing page of our website is up, frosted with cool insights. We've added 2 sections, Layer 2 traction and block space overview. Track Layer 2 traction with aggregated data from all the top Layer 2s. Your convenience and experience are a top priority for us. And now you can have an overview of the top gas-consuming contracts across all the Layer 2's block space in different timeframes, which is pretty cool to see as well. But yeah, I mean, growthepie.xyz has been this breakout website for tracking L2s just over the last few months. I think that they've been around. It's just been great to monitor their growth here and monitor how many kind of metrics that they've been putting here, because L2 Beat is great, but I think L2 Beat, obviously doesn't track as much as Grow the Pie does, but it also focuses on a different kind of thing of essentially trying to break down the technicals and the weeds of the different L2s. Like if you go to L2 Beat, I can show you what this looks like right now. They've got some metrics that they show here, which is fine. Like the TVL metrics, the activity metrics, value locked generally. But then if you go down to their kind of list here, you can actually see they've got the pie, right? Which is basically the decentralization pie, essentially, and the risk pie. They can show you what a current L2 looks like, what stage it's in, and then you click through to the L2 and you have an absolute wealth of knowledge about the L2 itself, with links to contracts, diagrams explaining how it works, all that good stuff there. Whereas with Grow the Pie, you have a lot more focus on the metrics rather than that kind of, I guess, like under the hood stuff. Even though they've got some of that stuff as well, they've got a wiki here that kind of describes the fundamentals and their API and stuff like that, as well as a blog which they go over some things. And I'm sure they're going to be adding more stuff like that into the future. But if you want to dive deep into different L2 metrics, then growthepie.xyz is definitely your one-stop shop, along with Dune Analytics dashboards as well, which have been pretty comprehensive too, but they're more scattered. Grow the Pie is more of a centralized repo of this, which is pretty cool. But there are so many metrics on here. I'm not going to talk too much about it. You can go check these out for yourself. But great to see them continue to grow their own pie here. And you can check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so there's a new paper out here from Akaki, David, and Ed Felton from the Off-Chain Labs team and the Ethereum Foundation, all about studying the economics of EIP 4844 and how rollups might react to a new market. So this is actually a proper research paper that you can check out, but there's a TLDR in this tweet thread here. I haven't read the research paper yet, but this is the stuff that kind of interests me, in that when 4844 goes live, what's it actually going to look like in practice? How many L2s are going to be opting to use blobs versus call data? How often are they going to be using these blobs? Like how often they're going to be posting the stuff there? Are they going to be outcompeted by other L2s? All those kind of open questions there. I think this paper addresses a lot of them, so I'll link the paper in the YouTube description below for you to check out there. But when it comes to the economics of these things, it's quite fascinating. And I think it's fascinating also from the perspective of Okay, in a 48-44 world, and all activity moves to L2s, what does the L1 kind of activity look like? Do we make up for the lower single, or I guess like lower small amounts of transaction gas fees in aggregate gas fees? Because I've seen a lot of people kind of concerned lately where they've said, oh, Gwei has been in the single digits for quite a while now on layer one. The gas prices, I should say, not Gwei. Gas prices have been in the single digits for a while now. Is that because people have moved to L2s? Sure, that's an element to it, but I think at the same time, the market's just quiet, right? Anytime you actually see the market hit up a little bit, gas goes straight back into the double digits, and not just like the teens, but into the 20s and sometimes 30s as well. So I think we have to wait and see what this looks like in a bull market. Like if we have 48, 44 live, we have all these L2s live, what do L1 gas prices look like when activity picks up again? I can pretty much guarantee you that L1's going to get expensive again, and we're probably going to see triple-digit gas prices at some point as well, because at the end of the day, it's this concept of induced demand, where yes, we have more space right now, more block space right now, but as soon as demand comes back, that gets filled up very quickly. The Ethereum L1 hasn't scaled at all. We haven't increased the gas limit of Ethereum L1, right? All we've done is offload some of this demand to L2s. Now, there is still plenty of people on L1, there's a lot of liquidity on L1, and there's a lot of MEV to be extracted on L1 as well, which is what pushes up the gas prices typically. And when is MEV most profitable? Obviously when the market is hot and when things are volatile. So we're going to have to see when the bull market comes back, what that actually looks like there. But I don't think I need to see it to guarantee that the gas is at least going to go back to, probably mid double digits, if not triple digits, during the peak periods there. But L2s will also see an explosive amount of growth too. We're just going to have so much growth across both L2 and L1 that it's going to be pretty awesome to see there. But yeah, we'll just wait till the bull market comes back. Hopefully next year, as I've been saying. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on that one there. All right, so Immutable has posted a tweet today titled Immutable zkEVM, the road to Mainnet and beyond. They continue with the recent launch of the Immutable zkEVM testnet. Along with numerous games that have already begun building on it, Immutable zkEVM powered by Polygon is on track to become the home of gaming on Ethereum. Now, I should disclose I'm an investor in Immutable and obviously an advisor to Polygon here, but I think the reason why I wanted to bring this tweet up today was, one, to give you an idea of where Immutable zkEVM is at today, and you can actually read this tweet for an update on that. But two, if you're following along with the crypto gaming space, I think Immutable is probably one of the top projects that you should be following along with, because there are just so many games building within its ecosystem, and they're not only building within its ecosystem, they're building on this new technology, this zkEVM technology that Polygon has put together here, which obviously is still on testnet, but plans to go to mainnet in December, January, as they've listed here. And then there's going to be Immutable zkEVM dedicated app chains as well, which can all interoperate with every other chain here. So yeah, just something that I figured was worth shouting out to those of you who are interested in crypto gaming. You should go check out this tweet, and you should definitely follow along with Immutable. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Polygon has announced today that as a result of community consultations, the POL contracts will be live on the Goerli testnet. Now, of course, this is one part of the Polygon 2.0 roadmap here of converting the Matic token to the POL token, and you can actually see the different Polygon improvement proposals that were approved here for this, and you can go check this out in this link here, but I got a few questions about this as well, actually, and I just wanted to clarify that you don't have to do anything today. You don't have to convert your Matic tokens to POL tokens yet. This is just a test net, and then when it goes live on mainnet, you'll have a very long time to convert them. There will be no rush, and it will be done very seamlessly. There'll be an interface for it and everything like that. Token swaps like this, or token conversions like this, have been done plenty of times in the past. It's not something new, but in saying that, I would definitely check with your accountant or tax advisors on things like this, because in some jurisdictions they would argue that a conversion like this is a capital, I guess, like disposal, so it could incur capital gains tax or a capital loss. But any sane taxation body shouldn't agree to that, or shouldn't say that that's a thing, because there's nothing changing here. They're the same asset, right? Like Matic and Pol, the exact same asset. But I'm not a tax advisor, so I'm not going to tell you what is definitively the law, or the way the different tax officers will see it. But the way I think about it is that Matic and Pol are, for all intents and purposes, the same token, so there is no disposal here. It's just that you need to obviously upgrade to the Pol token, because the Matic token is getting phased out. So yeah, that's my view of it. But definitely check with your own accountant or tax advisor or whoever you ask for tax advice, because that is something that has been asked to me, and I can't give any definitive answers here. I can just give my opinion, obviously, on how this should be treated. And as I said, it shouldn't be treated as a disposal of one asset for another. It should just be treated as a conversion of the same asset. And for tax purposes, it doesn't incur any capital gain or loss here, so nothing really changes from that perspective. But that's just my opinion there. And obviously, it'll vary kind of wildly from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but something to keep in mind for all the Matic holders out there. All right, last up, just wanted to quickly shout out that I'm going to be talking with Eric tomorrow. I know we've rugged the Daily Gwei drive-through for a few weeks now. We've both had things on, but we are recording one tomorrow being Friday, and then it will be published Saturday at around the same time that the Daily Gwei Refuels go out. And a big topic of tomorrow's discussion is going to be all about LSTs and this concept of potentially enshrining LSTs. So Eric asked on Twitter today, is there a technical reason why we aren't pursuing enshrined liquid staking ETH at the protocol level, essentially killing off liquid staking providers? I remember it discussed long ago, but now that LSTs are a threat to Ethereum, should we ramp up the research as a community? And I started talking to Eric about this just in DMs, and then we were like, hey, you know what? This would be a good topic for a drive-through, so we're going to save it for then, and I'm not going to talk about it now. But in saying that, I have talked a lot about this concept before on the Refuel, many times actually, and about how enshrining certain things leads to perverse incentives. Enshrining certain things doesn't actually help things. I think because of Vitalik's blog post, people are thinking about this a lot more lately, about this concept of enshrinement. But I think what people need to understand is that enshrining things is not a silver bullet to fix issues, because, and I'll just say this one thing about this particular issue. People think that, and I'm not saying Eric thinks this, but I've seen people say before that enshrining an LST would essentially solve the problem of concentration in Lido, for example, or concentration of stake. I don't think that would happen at all. I actually think that it would worsen the problem of concentration of stake because of reasons that I'll outline tomorrow. I'm not going to spoil them now for you, but that's my general kind of thoughts on that there. So yeah, anyway, look forward to, I guess the podcast is going out Saturday, but I'm going to record it tomorrow with Eric. As I said, it'll be out the same time as the Refuel is. And on that note as well, with timing, daylight savings kicked in Australia. So you may notice that the Refuel actually goes out an hour earlier, I think, or an hour later than usual. It always screws me up, the time difference there. And then I believe in the US, or when they kind of activate daylight savings, I think soon, the Refuel will be 2 hours different to when it normally goes out. I don't know if it's 2 hours in the past or in the future. I don't know. But if you've noticed that going out at different times in your local time, it's because, yeah, daylight savings are kicked in Australia, and we put all our clocks forward 1 hour, of course, which I love because I like longer nights. And it's warming up here. Maybe not the last couple of days, actually. It's been raining non-stop in Melbourne, but it's warming up here a bit, and I love the better weather. But yeah, it does change the timing around the Refuel, because for me, I still put the Refuel out at about 11:45 p.m. my time, but I obviously understand that the Refuel is global, and people are all around the world listen and watch it. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that for you guys there. But anyway, on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.